A very good morning to all of you. My name is Naveen Srivastava. Today I welcome our esteemed guest, Mr. Naval Kishore Bajaj, on behalf of Amity Business School and Amity University, Haryana, in the presence of our Honorable Director, Dr. Vikas Madhukar, all respected faculty members, and the students. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce our speaker today, Mr. Naval Bajaj is a chartered accountant, a certified internal auditor, a certified information system auditor, and a forensic accountant. In the 15 years of rich experience of working, he has worked with multiple industries such as industry of automation engineering, automobile, IT, telecom, FMCG, and foreign exchange. Mr. Bajaj has worked in multicultural environments with professionals hailing across India, Japan, Europe, Asia, and US. He is also a member of expert group of internal audit at standard IASP of ICAI. Currently, Mr. Naval Bajaj is serving as head corporate audit and assurance for Yogo Gava India Limited at Bangalore. In his personal capacity, he is a member of executive board of Bharatiya Vittya Salakar Samiti and very active in their economic think tank and corporate governance group. Mr. Bajaj is passionate about sharing his knowledge and experience to uplift others and inspire them to contribute towards welfare of the society. Mr. Bajaj is here to discuss about corporate governance scenario in organization during COVID-19. With that, I request Mr. Naval Bajaj to kindly take the session forward and enlighten us. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Naveen, for your elaborate introduction. Um, and I really feel delighted and honored that I have been invited by a very esteemed institution like yours to share my views and also learn some things from all of the participants here. And I would like to greet all the esteemed panelists and Director Saab from MIT University. Uh, now, because we have lost a little bit of time, so I'll quickly jump on to the topic under discussion, which is corporate governance scenarios in organizations during the COVID-19 pandemic. So I think there cannot be a more relevant topic than this to have a discussion, because COVID-19 has impacted individuals, families, corporations, and every bit of the world in a different way. And for some, it has become a nightmare. For some, it has become a boon also. It is not uh, uh, it is beyond the levels of crisis, because when we used to talk about crisis in corporates or a problem, there was always a unique way or a set formula to work around that problem and find out some solutions. But COVID-19 is not a problem or a crisis, in my view. It is a dilemma, because we don't have a clear solution. And we don't have a clear solution because we don't have the right level of information. We are still learning about it. And just to share with you, as you would have heard multiple times by now, this is the new normal. But I would say that it is not a new normal, because new normal, we don't even know what is the new normal in next 1 to 2 years. So all the corporations are currently in the mode of pure existential crisis. They are only thinking about survival. They are only thinking about existence for next 1 to 2 years. No one is thinking about growth. No one is thinking about ambitious plans or something like that. Because this COVID-19 situation has not only changed our customer behavior or customer priorities, it has changed the government policies, it has changed the priorities of your employees, and it has also changed the priorities of the management, because ultimately management is also, they are also human beings, they have their own priorities. So that was my initial note when we talk about the scenario related to COVID-19. Now, when we talk about corporate governance, very briefly explaining corporate governance is nothing but basically the board of directors of a company are the trustees of the shareholders, and they have a legal, moral, ethical responsibility to make sure that they take all the decisions in a way that just maximize the shareholder value, and they also give a lot of value to the society in a sustainable way. That is the current corporate governance definition in my view. When we talk about this, then what comes out is that this is the time when boards have to become active more than the level of activity they had in the past. Now, yes, the law prescribes that uh, there is a certain frequency in which the board should meet, they should discuss, and some agenda have to be done, this and that. But I am talking about tackling the current situation, and the board members also know it. Although I am not a board member in a big corporate, but I interact with all the board members on a regular basis as part of my role, because I report to the audit committee chairman and to the board on various matters, whether it's related to risk management or crisis or any other internal control matter. So based on my experience, I can share that board members are very, very active these days in evaluating where the corporation has to head. And the reason is that whatever was supposed to be business as usual is no longer business as usual. So I give you an example. If you talk about the worst impacted industry, which is tourism or hospitality, there used to be a situation where if your business model is catering to the nuclear family who was living in a metro city, you are definitely going to be a hit. You will never be in, at least you will never be in losses. But given the current scenario, as a family member, most of the people might not be very keen to take their kids out, even if we don't have a COVID situation or COVID cases in coming 3 to 4 months. Does that mean that there is going to be zero revenue? Yes, it could be, if you do not change the business model. So I'm basically trying to highlight that even the basic business model of selling your uh, food or inviting guests and charging them, serving them, has gone for a change just with a bank, and without any notice. People have not got any time to react. Yet there are people who have worked out different things. So I know of a friend who runs a restaurant, but he had a zero sale. Now what he has done is he has tried to um, contact someone in the government or with the hospitals, and wherever there is a need for cooked meals, so that at least his kitchen is going. His menu has changed, his pricing has changed, but at least he's making sure that his employees keep engaged, and at the same time his fixed costs are getting covered, so that when the situation improves, at least he will be able to uh, go further and grow about it, rather than sitting without any kind of revenue right now. This is just one very simple example. There are more complicated examples. Oil and gas industry was always supposed to be a cash rich industry, but currently if you see, all the oil and gas companies in India are in losses. Even if the oil which is being imported is being imported at a very low rate, but the capability of storage in India at a country level, I was reading in newspaper, is around 2 weeks. So even if the rates are low, and even if you buy at a lower rate, your storage capability is only 2 weeks. So there is a limit to what you can import. Plus, store, and at the same time the demand for the oil has gone down because simply people are not transporting from one place to another. There was a complete lockdown for so many weeks, so that is why currently they are in losses. So now if they are in losses, their vendors, the companies like myself, for example, Yokogawa provides automation related EPC services to most of these oil and gas companies, apart from fertilizer industry, chemical industry, pharma industry, and many other industry wherever there is a hazardous manufacturing process. We help them in automating stuff. Now we have got a lot of orders, and I feel lucky that my company has got a pipeline of next 1.5 years. But does that mean that we do not need to change? No, we also need to change, because the customers have got, as a temporary basis, they have got a cash crunch. So if they are not able to pay us, we will not be able to pay our vendors or our employees. So our business model also needs to change. Our business model also needs to get cash focused, which was never cash focused earlier. It was all about getting the order and later on we will earn it. But now company has become more and more cash sensitive. The second aspect, apart from the dilemma or crisis, is the risk management. So risk management is a word which is very widely discussed everywhere. But in the current scenario, risk management has become very, very difficult. There has always been a talk that why didn't pandemic risk never existed in most of the corporation risk register. Although in US and in many other countries, there have been so many talks about the risk of pandemic, but none of the corporations that I know had the pandemic as a risk register where they will try to plan, if the pandemic happens, then what we will do. Right now they are struggling with it, that how to cope with it. And the second thing is, risk management was all about quantifying the probability and the impact. But if you are in a dilemma, what is going to happen? It's very difficult to quantify the probability and the impact. Even the best of the scenarios given by Boston Consulting Group and John Hopkins University may turn out to be wrong. So again, it's very difficult, and that is why it's very important to revise your plans. Yes, there are questions being asked. There are questions being asked that what will be the impact on your forecasted revenue or on your forecasted costs. But if someone is trying to give you a smart answer by giving you a forecast of next 1 year, please do not believe him, because he doesn't know, and it's just a number that he's giving. Because right now, most of the boards have to plan for next 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, because we don't know. We are continuously learning about the new situation. And that is why the boards are discussing with each other more often than not. And a lot of times they have formed committees. Now I am not talking about committees which used to be of the past. There used to be specific committees with specific kind of experts. They will come and meet and do something. But now there are focused committees, and it is not necessary that the committee member will be a board member. They might pick up someone from the middle management or the top management of the company and put him in, because they believe that this guy is better equipped to provide inputs or do value add. Another kind of important thing that has changed post COVID is focus on confidentiality and the data security, because government has allowed in the range of 15% to 25% or 33%, 1/3 maximum of the people to work in these days. And if that is the question, only the people who really need to go to office for doing a manufacturing operation, or their kind of job is that they cannot do anything sitting at home, and nothing can be done with the laptops, only they are going to office. That is what is supposed to be done. As they say in Hindi these days, that घर से बाहर निकलना आपकी मजबूरी होनी चाहिए, मजबूती नहीं होनी चाहिए. So if this is the principle, then most of the people are working from home and using their laptops, doing a lot of discussions like we are doing right now. But then there have been so many instances where these kind of live discussions have been breached, and some unusual activity has been seen in many forums. Now, what IT experts are suggesting is that if you are really going to talk about certain very super confidential thing, then please do not do it on online forum. Even if you have to talk on phone, you talk on phone, because phone is supposed to be more secure than this kind of meeting, online meeting. So this kind of online meeting is very good when you have to present some slides, etc., etc. But if you are doing something super confidential, the IT experts, which are my friends, they have advised me that please do not do this on an online platform like this. Please use the phone conference mode, that is more secure. Another important aspect is the liquidity. When the customers, although I touched it briefly, but important point is that government has tried to support many of the corporates. And why I use the word corporate, because now the MSME definition is till 200 crores. So there are a lot of corporates in that category also. So there is a liquidity, how you say, the liquidity benefit or the support that has been extended. But whether we will be able to use it or not is a different question, because there are different banks and every bank has to formulate its policies. There are certain banks who have already formed those policies. Certain banks are still in the process of formulating those policies, and it also depends upon our past relationship. And there are corporations which might not have those kind of relationship in that particular bank, which is having a better policy. So this all has to be figured out. This is a new aspect. Communication is the key right now with all the stakeholders. See, I was recently I was in a discussion with the real estate developers, where most of the builders of Delhi NCR, they basically discussed about what kind of support they needed from the government side and what are the challenges. But I shared my viewpoint with them that you forget about COVID situation, but before COVID also there was a scenario in, at least in Delhi NCR, I know, because I have been there for almost half of my life, that builders are not being trusted for the work in progress or under construction projects. What is happening is customers are buying flats, especially the group housing societies, but they are buying only those ones which are already constructed. So this was existing even before COVID situation. So now how do you expect that this is going to change? And the key reason was that customers lost trust in those kind of projects or those kind of offers because of certain bad experiences of the past. Now, in this situation, if during the pandemic, if the corporations are not able to give that confidence to their customers and deal with them in a transparent way and try to work around or tell a lie, then in a long term also there is going to be a dent in your reputation or your image in the eyes of your customers, in the eyes of your employees, in the eyes of regulators and everyone else who is important to you. So it is very important to be transparent and keep communicating to all the stakeholders in a very closed manner so that they know what is going on. And as long as they know what is going on, they will trust you and they will support you. Contractual issues is again linked to the trust. If a customer is not able to get delivery, and unless and until we are transparent, we are able to show that okay, we have done our best, but still there are challenges, they might not take the contractual route. But if they feel that we are dodging them or we are trying to play around, there will be contractual challenges. Even if you have sent the force majeure notices, it is not going to work. You are going to land up in court of law one day or the other. audits, that is my topic. Audits are being seen in a different way by different managements. If you talk about mature managements, they are seeing audits as a friend who will tell them, okay, wherever are the gaps and
Yeah.
wherever. But if you talk about the other managements, they might see audits as an interruption into their regular exercise to revive the company or survive the company. So I think the whole issue, and I'm not talking about statutory audits here, which is required legally, so no one can dispute that. I'm talking about management audits or internal audits. And I think it depends from corporation to corporation and auditor to auditor, how much comfort you are able to give to your managements to share with them that, okay, this is where I can value add. And this is the time where you cannot boast of being an auditor appointed under the law, but you need to basically do the value add, and only then you will get involved in those closed door discussions where the actual decision making is happening for the companies. Now you talk about situation where for so many weeks malls and shopping complexes were not allowed. Now if you were working in an industry where your product was getting more sales in malls or shopping complexes than in the retail traders, uh, uh, you would need to change your strategy and make it towards the retail traders, because going forward also we don't know whether after 2 months again there will be a need to lock down. We don't know. I'm not saying there will be, but I'm saying we don't know. So this kind of a situation can be raised by the auditors and can be raised by other people responsible for giving assurance to the boards and to the audit committee, like the risk managers, like the crisis managers and everybody else. Now if I come to recent trends before COVID and we try to relate that to what is happening now, we will actually be able to identify a trend. So what was happening even prior to COVID? There was a situation where the trust between, and I'm not talking about all the corporations, but some of them, the trust between executive directors and the independent directors hit a new low, because all the fraud and everything were happening. They're all in the newspapers for certain prominent corporations, and government was just trying to find out who should be blamed for this. And you would, if you read the newspapers, most of the blame these days was coming either to the independent directors or to the auditors. And you know what? Both of these parties have nothing to do with the day-to-day operations of the company. They are only there as a watchdog or to prevent the issues coming up. Yes, there have been lapses on these two parts, but mostly all the issues are generated by the lack of governance on the executive side, executive director side or the executive management side. Now because of this situation, there was already a mistrust, and in COVID-19 situation, post COVID-19, if the communication between these two camps is not great, if the involvement or participation is not improved, this mistrust is going to just simply increase. And in the current kind of situation, if we are just trying to put the blame on one or the other, it's not going to work and we are all going to fail. The other trend which already existed prior to COVID was people were, especially the audit committees, they were continuously trying to gauge the culture of the organization. See, the independent directors do not get much of time to sit and interact with the management or the employees of the company. They are coming there quarterly, spending few hours with the board of directors in a set agenda. It's a very tight agenda normally. So what they want to understand is what is the culture of the organization for which they are responsible as per the law. So they used to promote or ask on the culture side. what it has done is there is a there was this is a recent trend that culture audits is something that has been developed over a period of time, although still it needs to be adopted by majority of the corporates, but many corporates have already adopted it. How do you do a culture audit? It's very difficult to say, because an audit needs to have a standard, and against that standard then an auditor will come and he will compare what is happening on ground against that standard, and then report it back to the stakeholders who have appointed him to do the audit. Now, very difficult to define what is the culture. And just to elaborate, what is culture? Culture is something which is defined by the unwritten rules of a particular society or of that organization. They're all unwritten rules. So nowhere it will be written that this kind of conduct will not be appreciated. But yes, everyone else who has been part of that culture for a long time would know it, would understand it. But it's not written on a piece of paper. But over a period of last couple of years, I would say that many organizations have developed a way in which even the culture audit can be done. The frameworks have been developed in support with HR, human resources, and what has and although also the compliance and the ethics teams. And the kind of things that are being observed are very simple. It is just about putting them into a framework. Like for example, if you are simply looking at the travel and expenses vouchers of a particular organization, you will come to know how much compliance is being done, what kind of quality of bills are being submitted. That will show you the culture of the organization. If you look at the kind of whistleblower complaints or the employee complaints or the grievances that are being reported to your grievance cell, even if they are not frauds, but the other category of complaints will tell you what is the culture of the organization, what is the issue being faced, and what kind of issues are getting raised. If you simply look at the productivity or the idle time on the computer assets of different employees from the back end, if you can generate a report, you can simply see what is the ultimate culture of the organization. And these are only 2-3 things I'm saying. There is a complete list of 24 items that we have developed, and we have started to review that, not to pinpoint on certain individuals, but to find out in a structured way where we are and where we need to go. Last but not the least, the digital strategy was always important, but now it has become more important, because not only because of the confidentiality thing, as I earlier discussed, but also about it's something that is going to increase. So corporations are expected to basically spend less time or less money as a capital expenditure in building the office spaces. Rather, they would give some money as an additional compensation to the employees and ask them to have a Zoom room or a meeting room, office room at their homes, and work from home most of the times. And it could be that you have a sharing basis seating space, that you come to office only when you have a meeting with a customer or very important discussion with the top management. So this is a reality, that digital strategy has become much more important than what it was. But there are corporations where still there is only half digital. SAP would have been implemented, but most of the bills that are being punched into the SAP are still in manual. So an accounting guy is currently compulsorily required to come to office, collect those bills, and then punch it into SAP. Yes, for your global reporting, for your headquarters, which might be outside India or within India, it might be a good strategy that they have got all the information online. But when it comes to the hard copy vouchers, they are still not online. On the other hand, if we compare ourselves with the Europeans or Americans, many years ago, their processes were completely digitized, especially related to the payment side. Vendors were giving their bills online. It was going into a particular place digitally. From there, it was getting processed and then paid out. Yes, it gave rise to different kind of risks, which will definitely come when we do the same for Indian corporations, but it was much more efficient, required less manpower. Now, when we talk about manpower, if we digitize everything, then what do we do with the current manpower? I think we might need to shift them to the controlling role, to the reviewer role, rather than doing the transactions. So this is another change which was already on the cards, but post COVID, this will get accelerated. So I think going towards conclusion, I would say that India's corporate governance is work in progress, as is the case with many other countries. And the current situation asks us to work together instead of departmentalization. So in this situation, if in a corporation, uh, if we are thinking or working in a way that this is not my job, you have to do it, it's not going to work, and we all are going to fail miserably. So we have to come together as good human beings. We have to decide based on the values, because the rules are not clear, and only the values will help you in deciding whether you are taking the right decision or not. And values are the ones which will take you through these uncertain times and make you successful. And last but not the least, I must specify that if a particular decision has to be taken by management, it must not be taken unless and until you are very clear about it, or unless and until you are you have the right level of data or knowledge about it, because it's very easy to take a decision and very difficult to revert it later, because the corporations are stakeholders not only internally but externally also. And it's very important that the corporation image or branding remains intact, and it's a very soft or subtle aspect how a corporation has been behaving over a period of years with its stakeholders ultimately becomes its image. So if you take a decision now, it is going to have a long lasting impact, and any strategic decision has to be taken after consideration and after taking full level of knowledge. Otherwise, keep it as it is. So I think with that note, I would like to stop my conversation, and I would be looking forward to your comments or any questions by the audience.
Thank you so much, sir, for giving us the valuable information during COVID-19, how it can help us. So I'm audible, right?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Yes. So we have one question related to if corporate governance having some internal conflicts, because now the rules and regulation may change. So if there is internal conflicts in itself in company, then how it's going to affect, because there's a lot of economic changes going to happen. So how it's going to affect the normal employees uh, who are approaching for job or already doing job in a company.
Yeah, so I think I tried to answer that, but I'll again answer. When an external enemy will come, your internal differences have to be forgotten. And I think all the boards, if they have to get successful, and not only boards, but executive management, they will have to take that into account. And they are taking into account. They're all sensible people. When you work together, definitely there is bound to be some difference of opinion, but that difference of opinion should remain only as a difference of opinion and not your personal grudge. And as long as that is happening, and as long as you are democratically able to discuss your views and then agree upon that, things are okay. So I don't see a big challenge in that respect.
Surely, sir. Thank you. Um, excuse me, ma'am.
Yeah, Naveen, yes.
On your window, can you see some questions? Because on mobile, it's not visible.
Just let me check. Yeah, I think I have this question. Yeah, currently I'm working on corporate governance in the government department that has less transparency and accountability. So could you please share your comment on this?
Okay. I think, see, as part of being previously being the co-convener of corporate governance group of Bharatiya Vitt Salahkar Samiti, I got to interact with certain very senior people who have even served on the boards of public sector banks and public sector undertakings also. And I've also been interacting with internal auditors of certain those undertakings. What comes out is that the processes that have been defined by these undertakings are very good. It is the implementation part that is difficult. But if we talk about the challenges part, I would say that there are very good people on the boards of these companies, and they understand the ground realities. But considering the cultural aspect, which has been existing for many years, it is taking time to change. Now, having said that, I would not say that everything is negative over there. There are good talents, there are good people who want to make change, and they are making changes. The first and the foremost thing which I always keep saying to everyone is that first of all, you have to survive, you have to exist, and only then you will do wonders in your life. And this time is existential time. This is a survival time, and then everyone has to come together, forget about their own personal benefits or things, and move forward. So this applies even to the government side. Have I
Okay.
answered you?
Yes, sir. Sir, can we move on to the next question? Hello, can you hear me, sir?
Yes.
Yeah, so the next question is, sir, that do you think that in this pandemic situation, there are more chances of corporate governance failures and corporate scams?
I agree with you. See, whenever there is a, okay, let's talk about scams or frauds. And there is a concept of fraud triangle. And fraud triangle says that whenever there is a motivation and an opportunity and a rationalization, when all three will come together, a fraud will happen. And in a scenario like current COVID scenario, there is always a pressure or a motivation to find out a way to bypass the current procedures, and that is where it's very critical to especially for the departments like myself on the audit side and the compliance side, to oversee the important aspects of the business transactions on a continuous basis. And it's very important to keep a vigil at a high level, but at the same time we cannot be stopping the transactions, and we have to trust people. So it's a very difficult balance that has to be maintained. But I think it is possible to be done if we just focus on reviewing certain data trends. It's very easy to do without really impacting or without really interacting with the individuals. So for example, if your average cost of a particular transaction or a particular process was X number, and if you are monitoring it on a daily basis or a weekly basis, and if it shoots up, you should get a red flag. Similarly, during the lockdown period, when you know your finance department was not working, and if you are monitoring your trial balance on a daily basis, and if you see certain figures being changed, then you can always go back and ask a question to them: what is the transaction that has been punched in, what are the changes that are being done? And similarly, if you talk about on the revenue side, if certain orders have been punched during the lockdown period, you can always go back and check that as samples. These are certain examples that I'm trying to give, that by monitoring of data, you can always find out anything that is going that could go wrong. And this was on the transaction side. On the banking side, on the cash side, we need to be very vigilant. And I think most of the corporations have very good controls around those processes. So unless and until there is a management override of controls, nothing is going to go wrong. And when it comes to the management or the board level, then no internal control will work. Only the ethics and values will work. So as an auditor, if you ask me my opinion, I would depend upon data, and I would depend upon the culture of the organization to assess where I see something as a possibility of wrongdoing. And wherever I feel so, I will be very proactive, and I would like to take authorization from my audit committee or from my managing director to start reviewing it. And this is very important in the post-COVID scenario.
Thank you, sir. I think we have another question. Sir, how do you foresee this crisis affecting the income inequality in India? This crisis of pandemic. Yeah.
Income inequality. Oh, okay. That's a very good question. Okay, so I think income inequality, as per the other thinkers, whatever I have read also, it's going to increase because whenever a crisis will come, unfortunately, the first people to lose their jobs are the ones which are at the Antyodaya side. But I have not lost hope, because if you see the entire package of Atmanirbhar Bharat, government has given focus only on two sectors majorly. One is the agriculture and the allied industries, and the other is MSME. So if these two sectors improve, I think the ultimately the income inequality, it might be in short term, it might increase, but in a mid term of say 5 years, then we are going to see some kind of improvement, because the rural population is going to get more cash in their hands, and the people who are working in MSMEs, they are also not having a great amount of salaries normally, so they are also going to increase, and MSMEs are supposed to increase their size over a period of time with this government incentive. Does that answer that?
Yes, sir, I'm sure it does. Okay, the next question we have is that does having female directors on corporate board does make any difference when it comes to corporate governance? Having female directors on.
I think I'm 100% sure about it. It does. It does make a difference when even in the teams. So personally, I make sure that in my audit teams also, I must have some ladies. It helps. It helps not only in terms of the overall culture of your department or of the committees, but it also helps in different perspectives. And especially having women directors on the boards, I think it gives more strength to the women fraternity. They can feel more strength, or they can feel that okay, they can approach a lady in case they have an issue. So the legal side of it is one aspect, but I see that this is definitely going to be a value add for most of the boards if the women are there. In my personal experience, I am saying.
Thank you, sir. Okay, one question is that since board of directors are leadership bodies of any organization, so due to this pandemic of COVID-19, what kind of leadership changes have the boards of companies seen currently?
No, I think if you ask me, currently there is no change in the boards that has happened, because the same people are trying to drive the organizations through this crisis. So I have not seen changes in the boards happening so often, and they're all good people. That is why they have been nominated by shareholders on those positions. But I think in management styles and the way they work together, the difference will come in future, because as I said earlier, there is a common enemy outside. So the personal differences, if there are, will have to be forgotten in the interest of the overall corporation.
Okay, sir, thank you. The next question is, merely having good systems without change in attitude for a good corporate governance, is it important? I mean, just to have good systems without a change in attitude.
I
And
really
what
like
method, yeah, and what method should we need to adopt to bring about this attitudinal change? So this is the question.
Very good question. I think only process cannot achieve anything, and only good people cannot achieve anything. They are complementary. If we have the best in class process, best in class technology implemented, but the people are not motivated and they are not ethical, it's not going to work. And the same way, if we have very good people, but we do not empower them, or by delegating the authority and the responsibilities, empowering them with the robust processes, right level of information, it's not going to work. So both are very, very important. And that is why whenever in my personal experience, I have initiated any kind of changes in the processes, however small they may be, in the companies, there is a need to do awareness sessions, and the awareness sessions is not only on the 4Ws, which we call the what, where, how, and the 4Ws is what, where, why, how, and in what way. But most important part is to explain why, because if people get convinced by the why part, they automatically start adhering to the process, and then you really don't need much of oversight on them, and you can cut the overhead.
Okay, sir. Sir, another question is that since you have spoken about customer engagement and taking them into confidence, especially because of the pandemic that is happening, so we need to take our customers into confidence. So similarly, we also need to take our employees into confidence. So what are the board of directors doing, particularly as far as stakeholder communication is concerned, to take them, and not the employees only, but overall all the stakeholders into confidence? What are the board of directors, particularly what steps are we taking to do that?
Okay, I think um, the most important part is to share what is the current situation and how we are coping with it. If you talk about employee side, especially, employees are most worried about their jobs and their salaries. So there are many corporations during the lockdown, they were able to share their actual situation of cash with their employees, and they were able to convince some of the most of the employees in voluntarily giving up their paid leaves in lieu of the salary. Now, I'm not saying whether it's a right or wrong approach. It depends on each company to company. But what I'm saying is none of the employees felt bad about it, because they understood that this is a situation where the revenue is next to zero, and if we want to continue our jobs and get the salaries in future, the company needs to do certain measures which might not be required in a normal scenario, but we need to support. And now there are certain other organizations who have not communicated it properly. They have simply sacked people, or asked them to leave. I think in my personal opinion, I'm saying those companies will regret it later, because it is the image that you create in the society. And the companies which are trying to support, and that's what I said, we need to think like a good human being, and we need to balance between performance and people. So corporations there are many corporations which are having a continuous dialogue with their employees, with their workers, that this is going on, this is what the measure is. And then wherever there is a mutual trust, they are able to sail through. And wherever there is no trust, you will see there are instances where not right now, but in long term or mid term, they might see some problems when the employees are not going to cooperate or even apply for those kind of companies which have not supported the employees in the current scenario. Does that answer?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. I think we have a few more questions, but I think we are also running out of time. It's almost 11 o'clock, so I think we'll wrap up this session. So I would just like to extend my vote of thanks, sir, on behalf of Amity Business School, Amity University, our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Pro VC, our Head of the Institute, Dr. Vikas Madhukar, all the faculty members and all students. Thank you so much, sir, for sparing your invaluable time and interacting with us and taking out time from your busy schedule. And thank you so much for doing this. Sir, I would also like to take this opportunity to thank our head of the institute, Dr. Vikas Madhukar, that he has helped us to organize for all the approvals, the resources, and everything else which was needed to make this webinar a success. And definitely a big thanks to our Amity IT team for providing us with the logistics support, IT infrastructure support, without which the webinar wouldn't have been successful. And all of you all, I thank you for sparing out your time and joining us. And this session has, I think, indeed been highly enriching. And thank you once again, sir, Mr. Naval Kishore Bajaj, for sharing your wonderful thoughts and ideas on how corporate governance scenarios are changing and how organizations are coping up in order to adjust to the pandemic scenario. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for doing this. Thank you all.